Well, I don't answer them, but they're there.
Lady called today exasperated. Can you help me get these text messages? Attorney General's office. I don't think it excludes political campaigns.
How's Andrea feeling? I was talking to her, boy, she was struggling with that coughing.
I just texted her today. I never talked to her.
The signs.
Okay. No, not at all.
Careful. Got two microphones. Better to hear you.
Okay, ready?
Budget workshop meeting, Monday, August 5th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. Bear,
Here.
Briggs,
Here.
Coulter,
Here.
Heidrich,
Here.
Holtmeyer,
Here.
Patke,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Wessels.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Will all the committee members answer if they have or have not read the minutes of the meeting dated July 1st, 2024? Bear,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Coulter,
Yes.
Heidrich,
Aye.
Holtmeyer,
Aye.
Patke,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Wessels.
Aye.
Need a motion to approve, guys.
So moved.
Motion by Patke, second by Many. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's approved.
Presentations, McGrath Consulting Salary Update.
Shauna's going to do
Good evening, Council. Would like to welcome tonight the McGrath Consulting Group. Tonight we have with us Melanie Henry and Melena Halverson Mays. They will be here to present the findings of the salary study they have concluded. So they will give you the presentation. Hopefully you all received your documents in your email and we're able to review those. I'll turn it over to Melanie now. She can come up and she'll present and give you time for questions after.
It's a PowerPoint.
Okay.
That's what they're going to talk.
Thank you. Make sure you can hear me.
Doing good.
All right. Get our presentation started. Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you for having us today. Again, my name is Melanie Henry, and we are here to present on our findings and recommendations on the compensation and benefits study that we conducted on behalf of the city. So we want to start off with the objectives of the study. We were looking at the level of market competitiveness that the city has with the external market, and we reviewed your positions, established that internal equity among the city positions. Using that information with the external market and your internal information, we developed a classified and compensation system specifically for the city of Washington. We've developed that plan. We've made recommendations on how to keep that plan current and equitable. We also looked at your benefits and have some recommendations on that, and we will be reviewing a few and updating job descriptions for the next month. We went too far. There we go. Methodology. So to give you an explanation of our process, we started with interviewing the human resources, city administrator, and department leaders to get a better understanding of the positions of the city. We reviewed your current system, like I said, demographics, job descriptions, policies, again, to get a better understanding of where you are positioned in the market. All positions were requested to complete what we call a position questionnaire. This was only required for each position, not necessarily each employee. This questionnaire helps us to get a deeper dive of the position so that we can use that in our analysis and understanding of the duties and responsibilities that they perform. We went out to the market. We solicited compensation information, specifically asked for minimum salaries, midpoints, maximums, and the incumbent salary of those employees. And we'll go into depth about who those comparables were in a second. Once we completed, we drafted a compensation schedule. We shared that with the administration, the Salary and Benefits Committee, and department leaders to ensure that we are placing the positions where the city felt they were comfortable, as well as what the market was saying. So those comparable organizations, this was a discussion that we had with the Salary and Benefits Committee as long as with our recommendations. We looked at who are you wanting to gain your human capital from, and who maybe are you losing it to in the metro area. You are situated in a very unique situation with the St. Louis metro area, and employees travel to where they want to work. So we took maybe a broader approach than has possibly been taken in the past. You can see on this list, we did look at some of those comparables for specific positions only, such as police, airport. We didn't survey all the positions there, just focused on those. Library, for example. The next slide, I believe, yes. This just is a demographic of where those comparables are in comparison to Franklin County and here in Washington, just to kind of give you an idea of how far out we did take a look for those positions. All right. So market analysis, we went out, gathered that information from those comparables, so now we have to analyze that and compare that to the city's positions. So we call that information a comp ratio. So what we're looking at is the minimums for the city versus the minimums of the market. The average market rate is 50% comp ratio. So that means you're paying $20 for a position as well as the market is paying $20 for a similar position. That's what you want. The acceptable comp ratio range we consider to be 45% to 60%. 45% is a little below. Those positions might be running risk of being a little too far out of market, but we still consider them to be in market. And then, of course, up to 60% for that acceptable range. I'm going to share with you some graphs of those comparisons for the minimum, midpoint, and maximum of your positions to the market. So this first one's the minimum. So what we're looking here is that minimum starting salary for the city for your positions compared to that same starting salary in the market. 70% of your positions were under market for that minimum starting wage. 14% were just getting behind a little bit, but we still consider that within the market, and then 15 was aligned to the market. The next one is that midpoint. So we analyzed where your current midpoint is on your positions and compare that to the midpoint of similar positions in the market. Again, we're about 69% under market, 14% are at risk of being below, and 17% are aligned with the market. And the last data point we're sharing is that maximum. This is that maximum salary in your salary range that you would compensate an employee for a position compared to the market. And the numbers really aren't changing a whole lot as far as they're all about 70% under market. This one has 12% are at risk, and then 17% are aligned with the market. We also looked at your demographics of your employees. This is an important piece when looking at possible changes to your compensation and benefits. The first graph there, we're looking at what are the average years of service by age group. So your employees overall have an average tenure of just over 9 years of service, which is a really good number. Compared to below that, I have the national average is just under 7 years. So kudos to you on keeping your employees here above the national average. The next slide is what is the makeup of your employees? This is important to kind of forecast succession planning. You have 44% of your workforce is eligible for retirement over the next decade. These are those employees that are 50 years and older. Then you have 34% of your workforce that we consider the mobile workforce. They're the employees who are more lured to go somewhere else should they see something, a better opportunity. So that's a good chunk of your workforce could either retire or go somewhere else if they see a better opportunity elsewhere. So that's important to keep in mind as you make changes to your salary structure. The next discussion that we had with administration and the Benefits and Salary Committee is the compensation philosophy. This is an important conversation to have to determine where are you going to align your position, your salaries to the market. We really have about 3 options to choose from. You can lead the market, be that top paying employer in the area. You can align to the average market, which is what most organizations do, or you can follow the market, not quite reach that average, and that's usually because of financial resources are not able to align you to the average market. I have highlighted in red the average market is where the city decided to align your positions to with this study. Another thing that's important with this is turnover. Organizations, this is your approach to designing and managing your employee compensation. So your goal is to attract and retain and motivate employees. When you have turnover, as I showed on the slide before, you've got potential for that with your employees coming up for retirement or they're mobile. There's a cost to that, and that cost can be 1.5 to 2 times the current salary and benefits costs that you're paying currently for an employee. So just to keep that in mind, that training, that compensation and benefits cost is a factor for turnover. So I wanted to review what your current salary systems are. You currently have a range model. There are 14 pay grades, and I get to use my hands. Between those pay grades, you have 8 to 10% separation, and between the minimum and the maximum is a 40% spread. You also have a police schedule. That's also a range model, 6 pay grades, 8 to 11% between the grades, and a little bit narrow spread of 36 to 39%. So that's what your current system is. And the recommendation that we have for your new system, keeping in mind that we set to the market average, and we use the 50th percentile, and I just want to speak to that for a moment. We did look at 60th and 75th just for comparison purposes and felt that the 50th was the best place to put you all right now, considering, if you remember, who we used in our market study in the metro area. But 50th percentile means you're going to have employers paying higher than you and employers paying lower than you. So you're right in the middle there with your salaries. We stuck with a range system, so that will be the same. We have 21 pay grades. We have integrated the police into all of the other city positions. The separation between the grades is mostly 7%. There are a few 10% differences there. The midpoint has been established, and that is aligned to the average market. So that 15% is the range from the minimum to the midpoint is 15%. The spread overall from minimum to maximum is 30%. That is a little more narrow than what you have now, but we were trying to pull your positions up more in line with the market. As you can tell before, you are behind the market quite a bit. There were some changes that we wanted to bring to your attention, specifically for your police officer levels and dispatcher levels. Currently, you have a police officer 1 and 2, as well as a dispatcher 1 and 2. And to get to that next level, that police officer 2 or dispatcher 2, you have to be here for 5 years. There's no change in responsibilities. It's simply a years of service, you get to a next level. That is not something that we recommend. We recommend if there's a change in pay grades, it's because of job responsibilities and duties. So in speaking to the chief and the director of communications, we're going to collapse those levels, so there is only 1 level for police and 1 level for dispatcher. That did come into play. There are some things that they have them do, such as field training officer, or in dispatcher quality assurance and trainer. So we recommend that when an employee is assigned those duties, they receive a stipend of 3.5%, for example, while they're doing that, because there can be burnout, and they can reassign that to another employee, and they're not demoting somebody by taking that away. Okay? There we go. So now that we have the structure established, we have to put the positions and place them on there. These are the factors that we take into consideration when we go through that process. We use that external market, what is the average market out there in your area, the internal comparability, how a position's comparing against one another inside the city, The position analysis, that's tool that we use that employees completed for us. And then as well as compression. You have a number of positions that with management and levels within positions that we want to make sure we have them adequately spaced throughout the ranges. Now that we have your structure in place, we need to help you all manage that. We want to be consistent. You'll need to determine what type of economic indicator you want to use on an annual basis and be consistent and use the same one every year. So you are comparing apples to apples on an annual basis. The CPIU is typically used for many jurisdictions. Then there's the salary schedule adjustments. That's where you would use that indicator to make an adjustment to the ranges should it need be from year to year so that you are keeping in line with the market and inflation. Performance adjustments, employees will need to progress through their own range. So those performance adjustments, as they earn those based on performance, can move within the range that they are in. The market updates, we recommend every 3 years as the conditions are competitive right now. We do recommend 3 years. And we've also given the city some metrics that you may want to look at on an annual basis, your turnover, exit interviews, maybe you have some positions that are hard to fill, what's going on with that, just some things to keep track of so you have that information. So the implementation of this new structure. We worked pretty hard with the administration and the committee on how to implement this for the city because it does come with a price tag, and we are aware of that. We decided to land on a 2-year implementation strategy. The first year, we are implementing a salary schedule that is 5% less than our recommended schedule. And this is to help with that budget impact. This will allow employees to get to that new minimum in year 1. So, for example, if an employee, their new pay grade starts, I'm going to use that $20 an hour again. If their new pay grade minimum is $20 an hour and they're currently making $19, we want to make sure they get to that $20 an hour. So we will bring them up to that 20. So they are within the new range. The next step is we have in-range adjustments based on their time in their position with the city. We can't have everybody at the starting minimum salary, so we recommend in-range adjustments. For example, if you've been here for a year or 2, you will get an additional 2.5%. So you're 2.5% above that minimum. So when a new employee starts, they're not at the same pay rate. We've recommended up to 20 years, different adjustments based on the years of service. This is for that first year. The second year, you will bring the ranges up to the recommended range, so that's an increase of 5% to the recommended range adjustment. Ensure that those employees are within the range of their positions, and then assess if there needs to be any additional in-range adjustments that may have come to light over the past year. So what does this mean for your positions and how they align with your, what I'll say, local market in this Franklin County? We took 3 positions and compared where their minimum, their starting salaries are to the recommended salary. So the salary for Washington on this is the 2025-26 salary schedule, not the one coming up this year.
Full implementation.
Huh?
Full implementation.
Full implementation, exactly. Thank you. Just want to be clear. So you can see that the city of Washington is going to fare very well with their positions compared to the communities in the surrounding local area, if you will. Okay. So the dollars and cents, why you're all here today. This is an estimate of what this implementation will be for the city. So bringing those employees to the minimum for the first salary schedule, which is 5% lower than what we have recommended, that is going to be around $400,000. That does not include, what benefit roll-ups means is your health insurance, dental insurance, those added expenses. This is just salaries, base salaries. Then the in-range adjustments, which I mentioned was based on your years of service in your position, that will be $307,000 estimate. So those two together would be, for first year, is a little over $700,000 for implementation. Then looking at next year, bringing up that 5% to the full implementation, the full salary schedule that we have, we're estimating that to be around $394,000. Then there might be in-range adjustments that we just don't know at this point in time that may occur as well. So we understand this is an additional cost to the city. The city administration's incorporating this information into your budget process, and details of individual employees will be handled through city council in the budget process. We also looked at your benefits. So I want to briefly take a high-level look at that for you. Your health insurance, we look at your single coverage and family coverage, so the lowest and the highest, if you will, that an employee might be looking at. And this is from the employee's perspective and what they may be paying for their insurance. So looking at premiums alone, the city fared in the middle range of the comparables. Then when we looked at if something happened and the employee needed to expend their deductible or their out-of-pocket maximum, how much are they going to be paying out of pocket for a situation that may occur? And the HRA, the health reimbursement account that the city contributes to, greatly benefits the employees, and that made your plan very competitive in the market. So I just wanted to point that out, keep that going. Then we looked at your time off benefits. Your holiday, you observed 12 holidays. The comparables had a range of 9 to 15, but most were observing 12, so we don't have any recommendations there. And you also have personal days, about 16 hours. Again, the range was 8 to 40 hours. You're right in the middle. We don't really have any recommendations on that. Your vacation plan, you have your minimum, your first accrual. You earn 80 hours a year. That's right in the middle of where the comparables were at. The maximum accrual, the highest accrual an employee could earn is 160, which is consistent with the market. The carryover balance, that is what an employee can carry over from year to year, is 160. And the comparables had a wide range. The middle was 200. That might be something you want to look at, but you're not too far off. So it's not what I would consider a high priority. Your sick leave. So we looked at your sick leave. Your plan currently has a dual accrual based on years of service, which is really something you see more with vacation. And most comparables provide 96 hours a year, no matter how many years of service you have with the city. Your maximum is 1,440 hours, and the median maximum offered out is 960. You do not have a payout, so we wanted to look at that. 40% of the comparables also do not have a payout, but 60% do. Those payouts consist of primarily of a percentage of the balance, 25 to 50%. So that might be something that you want to look at in the future. There's an opportunity there. In your retirement plan, you are a loggers institution, and your plan is LT10, age 65. And what that means is when an employee retires, if they retire before age 65, their multiplier is 2%. Once they reach 65, it drops down to 1.6%. So their retirement earnings decrease. That you all are the only plan in the comparable market that offers that. Most of them are just a 1.5% to 2% was the range between those plans offered. And you have a 457 deferred comp plan, which is very common amongst the market comparables as well. That is the study. So any questions that we can answer for you?
I would just like to go ahead and say, we did put together a benefits and salary committee to go ahead and take a look at that. Shauna, correct me if I miss anybody. I think we had Sergeant Mike Grissom from the police department. We had our city clerk, Sherry Claycamp, who was on there.
Finance.
Shauna, finance director. Tammy came in when she came on board. Shauna Fitzinger, obviously, our HR director, myself. But then we had 2 council members, Jeff Padkey and Al Bear,
And the mayor.
and the mayor as well. So,
This is the second time I've seen this, and obviously the sticker shock is there, there's no doubt, but it's also one of those things where we've been behind in a lot of those positions. I guess I looked around as they were presenting this, but the 3.5% training stipend, did you guys understand that? Like, so if somebody, a police officer who, you're not promoted to a sergeant, but if you're training someone, you're getting a stipend for that pay period, just enhances that, and same thing with the dispatchers. So it was something interesting to me at that time, but I don't know, I just thought it was a small but a good piece, I think, for me.
Something to recognize, yes, something to recognize those extra duties that are needed and essential.
Right.
In your packet, you also have, it's Appendix A, recommended salary schedules.
Yes.
And in those, you give these range, minimum, midpoint, and maximum.
Correct.
How do you establish the midpoint and maximum? Is midpoint, is that number of years? What is that?
The midpoint is aligned to the average market. So the comparables that we went out to, we do an analysis of all the salary information that we gather, and that is the average market. So that's what the midpoint is aligned to. Then we look at what is the range that is, because you all were at a 40% range, we narrowed that down so that we could focus more on getting you all into more comparable to the market since you were so far behind. So that is really how it comes out. And we look at the minimums as well so that you are looking at what other employers are paying and are you able to compete with that. So that's how that is established.
I guess my question then is, okay, it's called a recommended salary schedule.
Yes.
So where are you recommending our people to fall in there? Somewhere in that range?
Yes, you mean on an individual level?
Yeah, an individual library shelter, that's your first one. So are you suggesting that that person falls in that broad range you give between minimum and maximum?
Yes. So part of the implementation is that we want to make sure they are at least at that minimum. So we make sure they bring up to that minimum. Then, based on the years of service that they've been with the city, we have recommended a percentage increase on top of that so that they are within that range.
and I think, I guess what Melanie had alluded to earlier with her presentation was, we had to come up with a philosophy. Where do we want to go ahead and be? And I think what we heard, or what I heard a couple times through committee members, were based on the broad representation of cities that we had, that we took, and you saw that list, we felt that it was good. Like Melanie said, we've got some that are 50% that are going to be paying more, 50% that are going to be paying less. But we also wanted to look, and I kind of had asked the question of trying to take a look at, and I thank them because they included a slide that kind of gave you a little bit of the local perspective as well, too. So that you know, because I know some of you probably hear things with regards to, for example, a police officer's salary. Why are we at this when, other cities are at the same thing? Why can't we be paying more? That's what we tried to go ahead and take a look at it. So I thank you for adding that slide, but it gives you a perspective, especially when you talk about these 3 positions, because those are ones that you possibly, the police officers, you could lose that anywhere maybe within the St. Louis metropolitan area. Maybe dispatchers, it may be a little bit more, you're competing with Franklin County. So those are the ones that we wanted to kind of focus on too, and just try to see that by the time we do full implementation of this, are our employees, is this the city that we want to get the best candidates for? So.
And then also to go along with that, Darren, Melanie spoke about the 50% minimum. There was also the 60, there was also the 75.
Correct.
And those, I guess in my opinion, and the committee agreed too, that because we went to that St. Louis County market, you know, St. Charles County, you know, you're comparing Wentzville and Fenton and Shrewsbury salaries, not comparing Pacific and Union salaries. So, you know, and I could go along with the fact that, you know, if we're comparing Pacific, Union, New Haven, not to pick on those, but then we want to be at that 60 or 75. I could see that. But when you look at St. Louis County, then 50%, I feel, is the right spot, if that makes sense. You know, I mean, it was a big, big jump to be 50% to go to the 60 and 75 just on those dollar amounts. So we decided that early on, that because of our comparables, the 50% made the most sense at that point.
Yeah, I think before we looked at the list of the comparables, we were in our minds saying, boy, we really would like to be at that 60%.
Right.
And be able to draw it. And then when we started looking at who responded, and some of them didn't respond, and some of the things that we looked at there, the 50% was, in our minds, a good place to target.
Right. Yeah, there you go. The map shows what I was just trying to say, that, you know, that's a lot more St. Louis County, where you're, you know, historically is going to be a little bit better pay range or, you know, pay grade there as it is, you know, I mean, that map makes it look like we're out in the sticks out here, but, but you understand my point. I think it's, you know, we're in line with the 50% of those places there, closer to the St. Louis Metro, and I think that's the right place to be. Still, and then the other graph that you brought up with the police officer, and the other, you know,
Dispatch.
we want to be at that. We don't want to be, you know, less than our neighbors and then fight for that one position and lose an officer to Franklin County or whatever. I think it's the right place to be at the top. You know, we don't want to overpay anybody, no doubt, but as budget allows. But to be the mainstay, I think, is important for us to have the best workers, police officers, dispatchers, everything.
I was happy to see you mention the 1.5 replacement costs and the two for police officers. And to me, that's huge. You know, it takes into account a factor that you don't think about. If you lose an employee, you have to retrain, you have to spend time doing that. It's an actual cost.
Yes.
And I'm delighted to see you guys mention that. Gang, we're in competition with our neighbors for folks. We just are, for employees, and it's important that we realize that, one, they're our most important resource, and we have to keep them. And I think what you guys have designed, everybody's been a part of, I hope and pray it does it. I think it will.
Agree.
Now,
Thank
the
you,
hard
guys.
question is finding the money to pay for it.
We'll talk about that next.
That conversation.
That comes right in. That's a great segue, Jeff.
Thank you guys for making the trip, coming down.
I'll come down.
Budget workshop?
So like in years past, what we try to do is kind of give you guys a highlight of what we're proposing to accomplish in this next budget. Obviously, the biggest one that we just talked about was salaries. That's always a large item of our budget, and so we'll talk a little bit about how we plan on getting to that mark. If you remember the math that she gave you, close to $700,000 increase in over our salaries. Go ahead. Oh, I got it. Sorry, I forgot. There you go.
The big button.
The big one. Oh, that's right.
Last week, okay.
There we go. So in the general fund, if we do this salary study phase one, which includes, like I said, approximately $700,000 increase in general wages for salary ranges and adjusted compression. And then you also have, within the general fund, we'll have an annual payment to commissioned police officers. Two things, I guess, and I might as well bring it up because two of the positions that you just saw on the screen earlier, police officers and as well as dispatchers. Police officers, we do give that $5,000 what we anticipate. It depends upon the number of officers that we have. at the time of the start of the budget. This year, Jim's doing his best, and so is Shauna, to try to go ahead and get more officers and get us up to full staff, but right now, I think we're down 2 or 3?
We're down 4, but we got 2 in the.
We've got 2 in the hopper, so I mean, so technically, I guess that's down 2. But anyway,
Optimistic.
yeah, and then also with the dispatch, so that number that you saw earlier on the screen does not include that payout, which we do at the end of the year. The second payout is for our dispatchers, and that came with what we had proposed last year with the marijuana tax, to go ahead and use those proceeds, about $60,500, and to provide them with a $5,500 once a year added compensation because of just what we collect off of that tax, and that's based on the number of dispatchers that we have over there. So, and then we're looking at about a 3% increase in sales tax. It's looking like that's about what we're going to hit at the end of this year. But like I said, we'll have to wait for the last two months to go ahead and report. Just go back to the wages of what we did last year. For some of you that remember, we went ahead and we gave on the hourly side up there at the top, grades 10 through 15. We're all subject, well, grades 10 through 12 especially, we're subject to a higher market adjustment than all the rest of the positions. So especially grades 10 and 11, we had a 3% COLA, we had a 5% market adjustment, if you will, and then potential for a 2% merit, so that there was a possible maximum increase for those positions of 10%. Grades 12, not quite as much of a jump of a market adjustment, but a 1% adjustment, and then that brought them up to a possible maximum increase of 6%. All other employees, including hourly, grades 13 through 15, as well as everything that you see in the bottom half of that are could be they're upper positions, or they may not be, they may be salaried positions. As a matter of fact, the bulk of them were. They were just subject to the COLA 3% increase. We did not do a market adjustment for them at that time, and we did a merit adjustment of 2% for a possible maximum of 5% for all of those positions. And if you'll remember last year, I think you as a council, decided that until we knew that we were going to go ahead and try to get a salary study put in place, and that this was something that we could do to try to get some of those numbers up a little bit, in anticipating what our consultants were going to go ahead and say eventually. For the local use tax fund, so this gets into one of the primary ways that we're looking at funding this increase that you've got. You have received, and you all get a copy of the local use tax, just as well as what you get on your sales tax reports, and we provide those to you once a month. But you can take a look at what the numbers have been on the local use tax over the last 5 years. We have had, on average, a 20% increase over year to year based on the proceeds of that tax or whatever. Some numbers are a little bit bigger than others, but that was your average. The last 7 budget cycles, since I've taken this position, and I worked with Mary Sprung before this, now I'll be working with Tammy on this, but we have set aside 50% of that local use tax and transferred that over to the general fund to help with operations. What we're looking at doing is increasing that amount that you transfer from 50 to 70%. So that's an increase of 20% that you would be taking from the use tax and bringing that over into the general fund. So you still have projects, you have to, I think one of the things that we'd like to, if you look at, and I did not put it up on the slide like your latest local use tax, but if you can see back in 2018 to 2019, you were averaging about $500,000 to $600,000 a year in what you would collect on the use tax. This year, you're approximately going to hit 1.8. That's how fast that has grown over the last 5 years. So that's what we're trying to do. You're still going to have those money sitting in reserves for projects that you want to go ahead and do, and I'll get to one of those projects a little bit later as we talk specifically about projects that we want to do in our budget year this year. But you will still have that nest egg, if you will, for those types of projects if you want it. And that's the third bullet, which is like 1.6 million for your Fox Crest Bridge that we want to construct. That's the portion that comes off of Rabbit Trail to tie into North Crest Drive. So there's a significant, you can see that 1.6 million that we're going to be using out of that fund to pay for that on this bridge.
Is that 1.6 million from that 70% you plan on moving?
No,
over?
1.6 is just, that's just for that project. That's just the estimate for this bridge to put that. That would still be taking money out of the use tax fund, but that's what we've accrued over time that we still have in that use tax fund. Because we have close to, it's over 3 million. I want to say it was 3.8 at some point, is what I remember hearing.
So on a yearly, then at 70%, you're looking at bringing over roughly what, 350?
Take 1.8 times 70%, yeah, so.
Oh, the 1.8.
Yeah, 1.8 is what we take into the year.
That's what you're probably going to be taking in this year.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, that 500 was from when it started, yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Or back from years when we just didn't collect as much.
Right.
We've been collecting it for a long time, but you didn't have online sales when we first adopted the tax. So that's where you're picking up a lot of that.
70% of the 1.8,
So
okay.
that's 1.26.
Right. that's
Is the developer paying for any of the road, or are we just paying for the bridge? How's that?
That was part of your development agreement is two prongs. We were gonna go ahead and take care of the bridge, and then we were also, they dedicated the right-of-way, they dedicated the easements, getting back to the, and then we worked out what a budget would be for the road to be built as well. That's in here as well for your budget this year. That's under the transportation sales tax, and I'll get to that.
To your question, Mark, basically, the 1.8 million is what we anticipate the use tax will be in a year's time. Right now,
About 1.8 is what we
is what
expect.
it is.
this year.
And going from 50% to general fund and then to projects is $900,000.
Correct.
Now we're talking 540 still going to the general fund to do projects.
Or
like-
going, 540 still staying with,
Still staying with that.
in that
every
use tax
year.
fund, but the rest of it goes over to general fund. I'm
To
sorry.
the contrary, in 2019, it was only 400 and some thousand dollars altogether.
Yeah.
So, we're sticking with that and using the extra for salary would be the.
We still have some stormwater retention basins that Charles and his staff is still working on identifying what, as a matter of fact, we just got some bids in or some designs from some folks or whatever, so, but we'll be talking about that later, but that's still part of that fund. And then also, we're utilizing those funds to slip line sanitary sewer mains to reduce infiltration. We also use it for that, so. So the use tax, as I was saying before, that gives you a number of, like I said, what we've collected and the percentage growth that you've seen that we've witnessed over the last 5 years. So capital improvement sales tax fund, you have several projects yet that we're trying to go ahead and complete. We have the fire station that's pulling from several sources of funding, but 2.8 million is coming from the capital improvement sales tax fund. Final cost approximately for that is somewhere around 5, maybe a little bit over, but Tim's doing his best to keep as close as we can to that $5 million mark. Main stage roof, and I think he's got something for you a little bit later after I get done babbling on. You have $702,206 for the main stage roof. And then that comes out of the capital improvement sales tax. You're also adding, remember, 52,000 and that odd number from what we received back from the chamber. You have 925,000 for downtown Washington improvements, so we're still working on trying to go ahead and get the utilities buried on Front and Main Street infrastructure. You have 900,000 for a public works equipment storage facility. We're gonna have to take a look at that and see what is the best way to utilize those funds, but it has been identified all along throughout the capital improvement sales tax campaign, or the 8-year bucket list of projects that we identified. You've got 195,000 from the pool house renovation to turn that into your Parks Administration office. We've been pushing that a little bit further down the road each year, but we're gonna have to eventually, hopefully this will be the year that we're able to go ahead and make that a reality. And then they're staggering that over 2 budget cycles. You can see 195 in this term, and then 194 in the next. And then you also still have $200,000 devoted to sanitary sewer for slip lining. So that's still identified in
And
there.
on that one, Darren, what do you expect that improvement tax fund to generate it through the remainder of its life?
For capital improvement sales tax, you're talking? Well, by the time, I will say this, by the time you get done, you have been approximately getting 2.5 to 2.6 million a year from the half cent.
Okay.
And that's both for transportation and that's for capital improvement.
And we've got how many years left?
You got until 2026.
Okay.
So you have this budget cycle, this budget year and the following. And I will tell you, we had that committee when we met to try to figure out what we wanted to do about the main stage roof, and at that time I asked finance to give me a number ballpark, what we had unallocated yet still, and there was just a little bit around 500,000. So all the other projects were identified and still, and unfortunately, as we all know, the longer you wait, the higher the price goes up with regards to, material. But hopefully we'll have enough to go ahead and finish it. Obviously, we've already under contract for the main stage roof, and that was the biggest one. Transportation Sales Tax Fund. These are just some of the highlights. These are not all of the projects that we have because you can get into smaller dollar amounts. But this also includes you got to look at some of these numbers we're receiving federal reimbursements for. And the very first one at the top, the Highway 100 widening at Oldenburg Park, that's 1.6 million that we're receiving, and that's 100% reimbursement from MoDOT. 425,000 for the Riverfront Trail connection, and again, on this case, we're receiving grant funding of $250,000 back towards for that project. For the Bush Creek Guardrail project, it's about $100,000, and we've also got a grant for $50,000 coming from Franklin County on that one. Jefferson Street, the federal share is you see the number 1.1. The city matches approximately $293,985, and we just opened bids for that, and that project's moving forward. That number, I altered it based upon the bids that we received, which is good because I think we were looking for something a little bit north of what that figure was, so we feel like we got a good bid on that one. The $100,000 for East 5th and 100 intersection, this is primarily design money. This is going to be for your CMAQ application that as those construction dollars probably won't be here until 26, 27, but you can see what our city matches there, $226,000 on it. You've got $100,000 for more design services for highway and international improvements. That project, as we know, we changed the scope on that and it dropped drastically. We were at something like 1.6 total, and I think now you can see what the number is there. We're gonna be less than 900,000 on that project because the bulk of those improvements are gonna be on the international side, the north side of the highway.
And what year is that expected?
The design is this year. Charles, you know when construction would be? 27, thank you.
Both of those are 27 then?
I don't know. Fifth Street 127? Would be 28. I knew we applied for them in different years, so I didn't think they were on the same schedule. You've got the signal upgrade that I've talked to a lot of you about on Highway 100 and High Street. We got that. We put the money in. We got the request in to go ahead and do it. I've beaten my head up against a wall to see if MoDOT would go ahead and pay for this at that signal, but we haven't gotten anywhere with that, and so we need to come up with a solution for our citizens because that's one of the most complained about intersections as a result of the light. So your next step of what MoDOT has told us is that they've done everything they can with regards to the timing. Now your next step is to go ahead and have a dedicated green arrow for eastbound traffic on Highway 100.
But they decided that that's our cost.
That is our cost.
Any time frame on that, Darren?
School starts on the 19th.
It'll be in this budget year.
This year.
Yes.
School starts in 2 weeks.
It ain't gonna happen.
Right.
I will tell you that right now. That will not happen.
But I still want to know how MoDOT can say that that's their stoplight,
Right.
but it's up to the city to put the green light in.
Either.
I think, not that I'm gonna try to argue for them, but I think the arguments that we've heard is that is due to increased development to the south. You should, one way to do it that other cities look at it is if you have some development impact fee that for developments and say, hey, as a result, you're gonna generate X number of cars coming through this intersection, we're gonna have to make improvements to that. Here you go, you pay us an impact fee, that'll help us go ahead and come. MoDOT looks that's one revenue, or that's one source of how you could go ahead and receive that revenue for those improvements at that intersection. The argument I tried to make was, you were dealing with guy wires and wooden poles about 20 years ago until the city stepped up and did a 50-50 cost share with you in order to put that for when we knew we would have development out there. My argument didn't go very far. So like I said, and we're still prepared, we can still go ahead and make the argument, but that's not helping your citizens go ahead and get through that intersection any faster.
Is it the right thing to do to pay for it and then still try to ask for the money
We could
back?
still try to go ahead and do that, yeah.
It's gotta be done. Yeah.
The sooner the better.
So, and the rest of them, you got the East-West Parkway right-of-way purchase that Charles brought to your attention that we could go ahead and do out there where we don't want to go ahead and build it, but we've got the opportunity to go ahead and purchase the right-of-way so that when we do want to build it, we can to the end of that development. That'll get us that much closer to South Point. And then this is the project Joe brought up earlier. The road portion only is $650,000 to go ahead and do the Fox Crest extension. That's the roadway to pick it up from the bridge and get it all the way over to North Crest. So that's the highlights. I mean, you got a couple smaller little things, but these are the ones I thought most of you would probably remember. As we said earlier in the marijuana tax, we have, when asked before this tax was put before the citizens to vote on how the city would use it, we had indicated that for our intents purposes that we'd like to go ahead and use the bulk of it towards parks operations or to help them. Last year we took those funds and we did one of two things. We hired a full-time employee for parks, and then we also did the Parks Master Plan. Now that the Parks Master Plan is going to go ahead and be finished, what we're proposing to do with the proceeds would be take $100,000 for 2 full-time employees for ongoing operations within the parks. Again, they've already hired one. This will give them the opportunity to go ahead and hire a second. $60,500 would be a $5,500 annual payment to the communications employees that I talked to you about earlier. So you should have some more revenue, I think, even after this because of these two. I mean, this is $160,000. We think you're probably subject to close to $200,000 a year that you would probably be receiving off the marijuana tax. ARPA funds, and I combined it with the fire reserve. I apologize, Tim, but it's really just documenting the different funding sources that we're using to try to go ahead and pay for Fire Station 1 on the east end of town. $100,000 is what we've talked about committing out of ARPA funds to go towards this project. $700,000 goes towards construction, and an additional $500,000, that's out of the fire reserve, and then an additional $500,000 would transfer from the Washington Fire District towards that for a total of close to $5 million. It's a little over $5 million. You still have probably, in your ARPA funds, I believe you still have about $600,000 ballpark, what we've not allocated. One of the projects that was mentioned early on was some type of sign. Unfortunately, I don't know that we're gonna be able to go ahead and get something up there by the bridge. We're waiting for the consultants with the Parks Master Plan to give us an idea what would probably be the best use up there. You got a lot of easements up there too that MoDOT's got, so you can't put a permanent structure to block traffic to get through to go ahead and do maintenance work on that. But at some point there was some discussion maybe partnering with the Mercy on their lot there between 1st and 3rd Street and the area that's right around there by the highway is like a welcome to Washington type of thing. But what we had talked with the chamber and with downtown Washington at some point was to go ahead and put some type of scrolling sign so there'd not be a reason to go ahead and put up, you know, the fence posts and the signs that we've historically saw, you know, key intersections, advertising events whenever they come up.
Here in those ARPA funds have a use-by date, don't they?
We actually already committed and showed that we used them with just our general fund. We've exhausted that and shown that to the Department of the Treasury. So
they're not gonna come and pull them because they weren't used, okay.
we've already shown them that we've dedicated that with just general budget things that we can go ahead and do. I'm telling you, that's how much, since we've received those funds, these are the projects we've spent the money on and how much you've got left. So, that is in a nutshell, overview of your budget for this upcoming year. We would probably, we are welcome to all questions and inquiries, whatever you know, like I said, if you have things later on that you want to ask about, feel free, obviously. If we feel that we need to do another workshop, we can. Otherwise, if I don't, then we would just set the public hearing, and which leads me to another thing we were discussing today. Due to Missouri Municipal League and their conference being in September, that is the 14th through the 18th, and that would be your Monday that you would normally have your regularly scheduled meeting. So we're looking at rescheduling that meeting then to the 23rd, since the bulk of you will be up at Branson for that conference. So September 23rd would be our second meeting in September, and then that would also be when we would have our official budget hearing on the budget at that time for the next budget year, starting in October 1st.
And you think with these available funds that you just showed us,
I think what we can do is that, and then Tammy and I also talked about with the transition that we've done with, years ago, the city set up a vehicle equipment and replacement fund, and that was to go ahead and just have money set aside as, you know, as we needed to go ahead and purchase new trucks, et cetera. With the success of what we've had with the lease program that we've had, a lot of the vehicles we are now leasing, including the police department's gonna go ahead and start doing that for their Dodge Chargers, am I right? Correct. And that's coming up this next year. So they're gonna start that program as well. As you all know, Parks, Public Works, they've all started it already in advance. So with that, we don't have to go ahead and set quite as much aside into that budget for that vehicle replacement. We still do, because there's some pieces that you're not gonna be able to go ahead and lease, obviously through enterprise. But we don't have to have that vast expense of what we put in there every year. So between that and the change in how much you transfer from the use tax over to the general fund, we feel, yes, we feel comfortable that we've got the funding to go ahead and do this. That's exactly how we made the difference up. And that's why we've sent out an email to the employees letting them know that this was something that was probably gonna have to be done in 2 phases. There's no way that we could absorb a $1.3+ million increase to our budget in 1 year to go ahead and do it. Ideally, we'd love to, so you're not being pushed back another year or whatever, but if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. So, any other questions?
So simply with parks, streets, all that kind of stuff, the budgets have been in, and those are nothing out of the ordinary there, and that.
No, I mean,
matches
just
and-
typical maintenance stuff. I don't think there was, like I said, the special projects usually see out of these taxes,
Right.
these special allocated funds, so I mean. It's an exciting time. Now, I'll let Tim wow you with some renderings of what he's got for Fire Station number 1. But that's it. If you guys have any other questions, though, in the meantime, obviously, email, call me, whatever. We'll take a look at it. There's a project that, hey, I really wish we could bump this up or whatever. Let us know. But I've exhausted everything I can with that High Street. I don't think we want to wait any longer.
Let's bump that up too.
Well, it's in there.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. I don't think we can get the park there.
It's got Benson stuff.
They got an extra stoplight sitting somewhere. Sure, they can hang it up.
Good thing.
If you could just click the.
Let's bump up Rabbit Trail.
Yes, you told me when. Happy to.
What's the picture we got today? That's part of that.
It looks better on my laptop.
Look better on your
It
laptop?
looks better on my laptop. Good evening, council. After a lot of work and a lot of discussion, we actually have something to show you. So these are the initial renderings.
Hold on. It's doing
I can't win with a laptop in this place.
It's fine, it's fine.
Olympics.
I don't know what it's doing.
So
Nope. Why do you?
now it's the driver doing it.
There you go.
So this is the initial view rendering from the north. So this would be if you are at the corner of Phoenix Park, basically on Phoenix Park Drive. building's approximately 9,900 square feet, 3 bays, little offset bays. They're 2 of them are 65-foot deep, and one of them's a little bit deeper. If you could go to the next, there's a front-on view of it. The signage is still being worked out, but basically, we try to use the same kind of some of the architectural concepts that we have in our current stations and bring it over. One of the things we initially started with is trying to match the red brick of the city buildings, and when we got into the neighborhood, we found that that probably isn't going to work real well. It's going to stand out like a sore thumb. So they've toned it down a little bit, making it a little browner, if you will. And so we're going to run that by our committee, our building committee, tomorrow or Wednesday to get the final go-ahead to move forward with that. But the basic design is there, which matches a lot of the things we have on the existing stations. None of the lighting is shown on it presently. The hose tower is actually, if you keep going down another one, there's a view from the front northwest corner, if you will. If you got one more, Shauna. That's the rear of the building. So the interesting thing about this building is it fronts 4 sides. You're fronting a park, you're fronting a street in a city, you're fronting a commercial building next door with a big parking lot, which the plan is also we want to put a sidewalk against the property line with Aspen Valley so that there's a cut through to the park system from the street without having to cut across or cut in front of it. But the building fronts on 4 different sides. So this is actually the back side, so there is a door opening there. One of the things that we're very considerate about is opening doors in the rain. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're carrying a bunch of stuff in a hurry, being in the rain's a pain trying to fumble with keys to get into a building when you're in a hurry. So the access doors are all covered in this particular building. The Maltese Cross is one we're going to probably pull some of the center out of it. The fire company logo will not be on it, but the center cross in all of our stuff is the same. And so we were going to bring that forth as a building element as well. That's the west side of the building with the hose tower. So the hose tower, we actually shifted it back in the building and didn't make it so prominent towards the front, just to kind of help it blend into the neighborhood a little bit. I believe the peak of the roof is 31 feet, as I recall, or 32 feet to the peak. So there is cast stone, there's a couple different bricks, and there's a little bit of metal being used in the building on the exterior. I think I've got one more there, Sean, I think. Or is that it?
Metal roof, Tim.
If you do what?
Metal roof?
Yes, all metal roof, standing seam like our other buildings. We want the UL wind-rated load. If you would go back to the first picture, the corner on the left side is actually, part of that is a covered patio. So part of that patio is open, part of it's covered, and that comes right off the kitchen day room area. There are 5 bunk rooms in this building. Each bunk room will have three bunks. We have room for an extractor and a future SCBA compressor. All the extractor, we will probably try to see if we can work that in the budget. The compressor, we will not. That's long term. We'll look at that. A small workshop. It does have to meet the ICC 500 requirements for storm sheltering. So the northwest corner is actually a storm shelter in this building. So we're working through the details on that. It'll have a full generator backup back behind the partition wall there. That wall, there's going to be a wall that fronts Northcrest Drive, and that wall is to cover up the generator, gas meter, electric meter, all of those types of things to kind of blend in the side of it. So there it is in a nutshell.
Does it come out, this picture come out on Fox Crest or?
North, it'll come actually on Phoenix Park Drive. Is the look that you're looking now is from Phoenix Park Drive.
So the backside would be Fox Park?
Yes, so it'll circle back and come in on Fox Crest to circle back in. So the ramps or the aprons, if you will, one will be on Fox Crest side and one will be on the park side.
Okay. Cool. Nice building. Looks good.
You guys heard Tim mention the fact that the brick color, the roof line, all those kind of things. The fact that it is a front of a building on 4 sides. We're fitting a fire station in a neighborhood, in a park, and that was something that was early on. You know, it's got to fit, it's got to be right, it's got to be friendly to the neighborhood and that kind of thing. But I think they pulled all those things off, and I think it's the right thing. So
the architects did a great job. FGM is the architecture firm that was retained by the city. And they've done a great job, and I could tell they visited the neighborhood and actually got a feel for what was in the neighborhood, because they tried to incorporate some of that architecture into this building to help kind of blend it from the industrial, commercial, retail area and blend it into the neighborhood to kind of make it a smooth transition as possible.
Tim, there's a street that goes down into the park there past the tennis courts. So when you come out heading north, you'll be turning right onto that.
Make a right, yep.
So that street's plenty wide and everything to make that turn?
Yeah, so Darren and I spoke at some point in time. One of the things that when John Nilges was still in the city, we spoke about was sharing infrastructure where possible. And so that part of the Park Drive is gonna have to be redone at some point, and when it's done, we'll make it heavier concrete. That way it reinforces it for the fire trucks, but it's also a long-lasting park drive, so it'll do double duty.
We're gonna put the station in the park. That would have really been.
Through this whole process, I've watched and participated in some of the New Melly Firehouse right along Highway Z. And at the beginning, it's like, okay, this is what ours is going to look like. You had that vision. And this is so much softer to the neighborhood, to use the right word. When you drive by there, I mean, it's neat looking, but the way the angles are and everything else, there's no way it would mesh with a subdivision, with houses around. I can appreciate that, you're not just trying to throw out this wow building, odd roof lines and everything else. So again, I think this is important that it fits in the neighborhood and it's the right thing.
FGM did a very good job in the massing. They originally came at us with 27 different layouts, if you will, the way it fronts, and that was a horrible, horrible call. And so we got it from 27 to 5 and 5 to 2, and then cleaned it up from there and got it down to this.
Chief, where are you gonna put all your equipment at? So your HVAC, is it gonna be on the east side over here? Or?
It's going to be behind that, so that wall's going to come out and then go south along the building, and so you'll have a brick-on-brick wall, basically, which will blend right against North Crest. Yes, it'll jet out and come out, so that wall will parallel the building, and so you'll have your generator, HVAC, I missed the HVAC, good catch, Mark. HVAC, electrical service.
It's all gonna be hidden.
Hidden behind there. Mhm. We talked about putting a wrought iron fence in there, and then the architect said, we can do it, but it looks like a cage. I'm like, well, it might not be a bad idea to keep them guys in like that, but they opted to go for the wall just to kind of break that up a little bit.
Nothing $5 million won't buy you, right?
We're hoping to trim that down quite a bit, so we'll see what we can do. We had a call with the MEP today, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer today, and they're moving rapidly on it. We got the final, we believe we have the final footprint of the building, not the footprint. Footprint's been identified for a while. The final layout, interior layout. I think we have all the walls and doors put where they need to be, and we received that today too. So I believe that is now finalized.
How close is that gonna come out to bid, do you think?
We're looking to come out to bid in October, so we're running about 6 weeks behind. We wanted this thing to go out to bid later this month, early next month, but we're running a little behind right now. But they're diligently working on the drawings. I know they're doing things in tandem and parallel because there's conversations between the architect and engineer, stuff that we haven't seen. So I know there's like reflected ceiling plans. I have not seen a reflected ceiling plan, but they're calling out different things in the ceiling, so I know that work's getting done.
It's a lower profile than I expected. I like that too.
I agree, it fits you guys. We need it. I think our citizens will understand that even though it's $5 million, we're being good stewards with their money by building something like this that fits in the neighborhood, that's functional. A little while later in the next meeting, we're going to vote on infrastructure. With the discussion we've had about increasing our employees' salaries, that's another investment that we're making. And if you ask me, that's being good stewards with our citizens' money because it's looking forward to the future. So, thanks, Tim.
Very well. Thank you.
Got anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Any other department heads have anything? What's that?
So on a surprise email on Friday, the fire department and city received a $105,000 ARPA grant from the state on communications. So it's a 50-50 grant match. We had no expectations of getting it. We kind of threw it together and kind of added things that we thought were a long shot. And when the initial grant release came out, the city of Washington was not part of the release of the names of the cities that were awarded. And 3 weeks later, we get a letter from the state saying we were awarded it. So we received $105,000, so we'll be working through that and getting that going for radio and communication equipment.
Congrats.
That'll pay for the radios for this truck and this station.
We do have some executive session items that we could discuss between now and the council meeting, which starts at 7. So we could knock some of them out. If Mark gets here a little bit beforehand, we'll get them all out. But if not, we'll just have 2 quick ones later.
Ready?
Ready when you are.
Executive session, public vote on whether or not to hold a closed meeting to discuss personnel, legal, or real estate matters pursuant to section 610.021 RSMO 2000. Thayer,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Coulter,
Yes.
Heidrich,
Aye.
Holtmeyer,
Aye.
Patke,
Sure.
Reed,
You bet.
Wessels.
Aye.
By your vote, we're in executive session.
Cardinals lost 6.
I know. We getting updates.
They lose
Bad. How'd that go? 6-0. That's a win.
That went over like 11.
They've been on a bad run.
Yeah. Hey,
Yes.
I don't like the fire station.
I thought they'd,
Yeah, it's the first time I saw it.
after the All-Star break,
great.
went the other way.